Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in this short video I'm going to address a question I was asked by somebody recently, and that was, how do you decide if a paper is any good to make prints on? I've got all kinds of papers. I've got sheets of papers, I've got rolls of papers, and they come from all different places. Now, I'm going to be talking mainly about the situation in the UK here, but I'm going to go through some of my sort of general principles and guidelines, which I would use if I was looking at paper suppliers elsewhere as well. So, first of all, if I've got an Epson printer, then Epson papers are going to be a relatively good choice. They may not be the most stupendous papers, but they have some very good ones, some of the art papers and things. They may be more expensive than you want to pay, but that's not the question at the moment. It is the paper any good? And in general, yes, there will be. Similar goes for Canon. Canon have a range of excellent papers for Canon printers. Now, you don't, as I say, necessarily know they're going to be the absolute best, but they're going to have been tested with those printers, and quite often there will be profiles available for them. Certainly for better printers you get to pay lots more profiles for papers, and profiles are an integral part of high quality printing. But as I say, then, the key bit about using the manufacturer's papers is that they've been tested with the printers. So I always say, when you get a new printer, start off with some manufacturer's papers, even if it's just a small pack of smallish sheets of it, just to get a feel for the printer. One other thing as well, if the printer has a fault, and it's not unknown for brand new printers to have a fault, if when you contact the manufacturer and say, here, this printer you've produced for me is no good, the first thing they're going to ask you is, what paper have you been using? Now, if you've been using another paper, no matter how good it is, you've given them an excuse to fob you off. Now, I say fob you off, they might say perfectly reasonable, you should try it with some of their own papers. Yes, that's true. So always start off with some of the original manufacturer's papers. But what about third-party papers? And remember that neither Canon nor Epson really make their own papers. So in a way, even the Canon and Epson papers, even if they've got Canon or Epson printed on the back of it, they've had them made for them. They're fairly standard papers which have been produced, and they're available in their packaging. So there are only a few paper makers and even fewer specialist paper coaters, and it's the paper coating that receives the ink. It's the paper coating, as perhaps more so than the actual paper itself underneath, that gives the look, the feel to the print. And as I said, there are only a few of them. Now, how do I decide on papers I'm going to use? Well, there are some sort of famous names that I'll happily assume are probably going to be fairly good. Now, this is not an exhaustive list because I've only tested a few of these. I only get a chance to test certain papers. I certainly couldn't afford to buy boxes and boxes of papers of all different sorts just to test them out and say, yeah, this works, with a printer that I might only be using for a few weeks. So ones like Hahnemühle, Canson. Now they're well-known brands. They make their own papers. They are ones that I would go. Other well-known brands, well, I'll say neither one way nor the other. Some may only be third-party papers with a famous brand label on it, but certainly in terms of generally in famous brands, you know, something like Hahnemühle and Canson are ones that I know. Now, just because I don't mention something here doesn't mean I'm saying it's no good. It most likely means that I've just never had a chance to test it. So that goes for a lot of papers in the US, for example. Now, for example, I know that Red River Paper, one of the companies over there, produces a lot of information connected with prints and stuff like that. I suspect that some of their papers are quite good as well, but I can't say because I haven't actually tested any. So always remember, my tests, I'll only give definite opinions about stuff I've actually had here to print, to test, to see what it's like. How do I decide if I find a paper supplier offering me a paper of a particular type? Well, let's say a photo paper, let's say a Leicester paper of some sort. You can find all sorts of papers online if you start hunting around and looking. what do I want to know? What's going to give me confidence in that paper? And I say, this is the stuff that you can apply no matter what country you're in. First of all, does the supplier give me full technical specs for the paper? If they do, that's a good sign, particularly if they actually understand what those specs mean. So if I can talk to someone at the supplier, and it's always good if you can talk to someone at a supplier, if I can talk to somebody and say, well, this particular paper here has a particular brightness level of such and such. Do you have anything with slightly more brightness or slightly less brightness, or more warmer colour? If they know about that stuff, that's a good sign. Likewise, ICC profiles. Now, ICC profiles, I make my own. I produce them when I'm doing printer testing, and I've produced them for years. However, I appreciate that most people are unlikely to have the kit to actually make profiles and things like that. So what about getting ICC profiles from the suppliers? Well, if the printer is good enough, more suppliers will offer profiles. This is actual paper. So if you look at someone like Hahnemuhle, Canson, see, they will offer actual profiles and stuff like that. I should include in names like that in actual paper makers, Innova as well. They make a lot of papers. I've seen their papers with other people's labels on as well. Many companies do that. I know in fact, I've got some Innova papers to test that I'm going to be looking at on this big P5000 here coming up. So I've used their papers for years, but often they don't sell, they're sort of stuff you buy via somebody else. They've got lots of technical information. That's a good sign. ICC profiles, they provide ICC profiles. That is a good sign as well. Remember that to actually offer support to customers in the form of ICC profiles, especially custom ICC profiles, takes effort and money. It costs a business money to provide profiles for lots of printers. If I see a paper supplier that offers free profiling or has a large range of profiles available already for their papers for different printers and has lots of support information, that's always a good sign, because if that company is prepared to actually spend the money in providing a good service, that suggests they're serious about their papers. If I see, let's say, what are the warning signs I see? Well, obviously, if I see, Joe Blogg's paper, if I see this and there are no technical specs other than grams, weight or something like that, there's nothing about thickness, it's not available in lots of sizes. They don't stock it in rolls and large sizes as well. If I don't see that, if I don't see any mention of ICC profiles, those are red flags that I go, okay, doesn't mean the paper won't be any good. It just means I'm a little bit more wary. And there is, remember, no way of telling just by looking at a sheet of paper that I've printed on. Now, this doesn't have anything written on the back of it. It's a Leicester finish paper. There is no way I can tell just by looking at a paper like this whether the inks are going to fade in 6 weeks, whether they're going to last 60 years. I have no idea just looking at a paper. It's very difficult to tell. There are quite a lot of things I can tell about paper from its thickness and from the backing and from the surface finish, but that's experience. If that information doesn't come from the actual people selling it, then I'm a little bit wary. The other thing is, look at the website. Does the website look cheap? Does the website look like they're just trying to flog stuff? Do you get the impression that not only do these people sell paper, they probably sell cheap ink as well? And if you see the word compatible anywhere like that, and there are lots of stuff saying, yeah, buy ink here, it's fully compatible. If you see that, they raise a flag. Likewise, do I think that the people who run the website also have a market stall at the weekends or something like that? If they have that cheap feel about them, then you have been warned. If you buy cheap paper, it may work, it may not work. It's the sort of the trade-off you make. Doesn't have to be expensive, but there is a lot of cheap, poor paper about. It's very easy to buy internationally, get it shipped. If I wanted to produce the Northlight brand of cheap photo paper, I could get it boxed, put in boxes with my specifications of the label on the box, and I could get it shipped here and I could sell it. It's dead easy to buy paper on the international market, get it arranged and sell it under your own brand. So always be careful about that. Anyway, I will just finish off with a list, and this is in no particular order. In fact, I'll do it alphabetical just to make sure, of companies in the UK that I've dealt with that I'm happy supply. Now, it's not an exhaustive list. This is just companies that I'm happy to look at their papers, test their papers. Paper Spectrum here in Leicester, my local supplier. The guy who runs it, I know he's my local go-to paper expert. I could take him a sheet of paper like this and he'll tell me who made it, probably. That sort of expertise I appreciate. So that's a local supplier. Fine Art Photo. Now, I've had Innova papers off them. Very good supplier there. Never had any problems with that. So, PhotoSpeed, another company, well-known UK company. They provide profiles, they'll provide information. They do lots of other stuff as well. They're serious. They're not just some, garage somewhere where they stock paper and they sell it out the back of a van or something like that. They're a proper company. That makes a difference. Innova, I've mentioned. Permajet. Company also, I know the guy who runs it. I've known them for years. They take a genuine interest in helping people produce great prints. Now, obviously, like all of these companies, their business is selling you paper and other things as well for many of them. But that's a quality service. So we've got loads of that. I mentioned Red River in the States. I know they do. The reason I mention them is because I get asked, how much does it cost to make a print? I have no idea. I don't have the interest or the spare ink to do comprehensive tests of how many prints you get inks and work out the costs. Hence, I always point to the Red River How Much Do Prints Cost site. I'll put a link in the notes to this here for that. But there are loads of other suppliers, and I can think of several in the UK that I've not mentioned purely because I've not dealt with them. But use the signs like, do they look too cheap? Do they offer technical specs? Do they offer support? Do they offer ICC profiles? Look for things like that, and I think you should be fairly lucky with getting good papers. Of course, the big problem is just changing papers and things in the hope that your prints will look better is often a forlorn hope, because the real problem with people's prints is often their photography. But that's a matter I've covered in an awful lot of other videos. Oh, it goes for my own prints as well, not just other people's. But yeah, how to find papers. Now, hopefully that's interesting and of use to some. Please do ask questions. It's people asking questions that gives me sort of the ideas for doing these short videos. And if somebody's taken time to ask me the question, I'm going to assume that there are other people who wondered about it as well. So thanks for watching this. Please do subscribe to the channel, and thank you.